Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Island Forward Live. Looking forward to, again, always hearing where you guys are tuning in from. We have the behind the scenes going on live on my Instagram profile. But the rest of you are tuning in as usual. This is across Facebook, Jamaicans.com as our media partner. Host this on their Facebook page, facebook.com/slash One Love Jamaica. And then we also have it on my LinkedIn profile, David Mullings. It's on Blue Moho Capital's YouTube page. And it is on my Twitter account as well, David Mullings. So super excited. Start coming in, guys. As usual, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We almost had to take a pause this week, but I decided to make sure it happened. I want to say thank you to everyone joining in on Instagram as well, and looking forward to your comments, your questions. And also, always, I want to start off by having you guys tell me, what you guys up to, where you tuning in from. I especially want to know where you're tuning in from, or where you're from in Jamaica, if you're from Jamaica. So I love giving those shout outs, love bigging up. I just saw a text message coming from a friend of mine who is watching. So thank you for that message. I did see it. Don't worry. But today, guys, I'm going to add this and show you what I'm going to be discussing. You see the topic itself, but this is what I'm going to be going over. The COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force that was previously appointed by the Prime Minister of Jamaica before they had elections, had released a report on June 30th. And this report is actually 135 pages long, as you can see. I have not seen much discussion about it. I have a copy here, and so I'm going to go through as much of it as we can during the 1 hour show that we have. Take some questions. I can tell you that we're probably not going to get through a quarter of this. It is very in-depth. It was really interesting. Big up to Sham. I see Sham it's been a week. Dallas, Texas in the building. Thank you, Sham. Always supporting. I see Xavier Scott jumping in from Chicago. I see Trinidad and Tobago is joining in here on Instagram. This is awesome. I see Lissandra Rickards waving to me. Hi, Lissandra. Really excited. Wow, I just saw a notification come from on my iPad about the Snowflake IPO. So that price is a lot higher than I expected. That's awesome. But that's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. I want us to talk more about this COVID-19 Economic Recovery Task Force and the report, and talking about Rebuild Jamaica. Because one of the things I was talking with a friend of mine over the weekend is that sometimes I'm disappointed that somebody like me who lives outside of Jamaica and chooses not to vote in Jamaica for personal reasons knows more about some of the things happening in Jamaica and the economy and the plans. And that's why I do this show. I want to share as much of the knowledge that I have and as much as what I'm allowed to share publicly, so other people can have access to that information. And hopefully that gets more people to be as optimistic about Jamaica's future as I am, and ultimately the Caribbean's future. This is called Island Forward. Right now we're focusing a lot on Jamaica, but we will get elsewhere. So I need to big up Andrew. Andrew Barnett is in from Atlanta. So ATL is in the building. I see Ken is always here. Man, I really appreciate what you're doing. Ken actually has a video interview scheduled with me, so you guys will get to see after he gets that done and puts it up. So he's in Maryland as always. Hamza is in Toronto and Guyana. Wow. All right, so we got some Guyanese supported in here. So I love this. And Akilia, hey brother, at work in Brooklyn, New York. I appreciate that, Akilia. Thank you. Jamie is in from Dallas, Texas. So we got 2 of you from Dallas. So Dallas is winning so far. I like this. And of course, I love seeing so many people from LinkedIn. I'm surprised because I expected to get more support from Facebook, actually. I expected to get more viewers from Facebook. So we have 27 of you watching live right now online here. And then I've seen friends like Chrissy G and Kai on Instagram also watching and waving. So I see all of you. Thank you, guys. So let's get into this, because will there be a recorded version on Island Forward? So yes, Hamza, all of these are actually saved on Facebook. So you could go to jamaicans.com/OneLoveJamaica, and then they actually separate those videos. So you can click Island Forward. There's a playlist. But all these shows are actually recorded on YouTube as well. So if you go to youtube.com/Blue Moho Capital Partners, all of the shows that I've done are hosted on there. So it's automatically recorded. So you can go back and look at others. You can go over this one. So thank you very much for that. And yes, they are recorded. So guys, we're going to get into it. I see somebody saying, hey, David, it just says LinkedIn user. So I don't know who that is. So hi, LinkedIn user. And maybe the profile is private, but thank you for tuning in. Now let's get to work. I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised. Maxine. Hi, Maxine. You need to say where you're watching from, Maxine, because I want to big up Florida. She doesn't really have to say it. Big up Florida in the house, which is obviously where I live. And before we start, you know what I'll say? Before we start, I was just in Miami. I was in Miami yesterday, touring our new office on Brickell. And it was eerie. Right? There was still a lot of traffic because it is Miami. But very few people are out and about. Everybody was in a mask. It was very socially distanced. It was really interesting. But I felt very safe. I'll be very honest. I felt very safe down there. I spent the night with my parents in Palm Beach after hanging out with my brother in Pembroke Pines. So it was really interesting because I have not been as far to Miami since the end of February. Right? I've mainly been at home in Orlando. And this is the first time I've driven more than 30 miles outside of my home area, more than 30 minutes as well away from home since late March. So hopefully you guys hanging in there, because I definitely was getting that itch. But we'll see how it goes. So of course, Maxine wants to be specific. Tampa, Florida is in the house. So big up Tampa, Florida on the other coast. And of course, hey, cuz, I see you. Big up, respect. All right. As you said, the cuz thing, I just remember mom and dad had me for breakfast this morning, and mom did this omelette and toast. And I asked mom if there's butter for the toast. And she was so proud to bring me a nice tub of chiffon butter. She said, we don't just have butter, we have chiffon, which is made by Separate in Jamaica. And it was awesome. They bought it at a food store in Palm Beach, and they were just so excited to be showing me chiffon. And then mom said, oh, by the way, we were watching a clip of your show recently, and we hear you talking about jackfruit. And you mustn't tell lying yourself, because when I was younger, mom used to make these muffins with pieces of jackfruit in there. But she never told me. This is the first time in my life that I heard that I had muffins with jackfruit. So mom is saying that I shouldn't tell anybody that I don't eat jackfruit. What I need to do is correct the record and say that mom has made muffins with little pieces of jackfruit in there, and I ate it with no problem. It gives it a certain aroma and flavor. So big up to mom. And yes, chiffon, you're jealous of bad enough, Maxine. We're going to have a card in and get a tub over to you in Tampa. But Separate, guys, let me message Richard Pandori on Twitter. You guys need to expand your distribution in the state of Florida. Jamaicans want some chiffon. We want some chiffon. Well, let's get into this now. I appreciate this, guys. It's fun to start this way and just let's break the air. But now we're gonna get serious, and we're going to have to do this over multiple weeks. There's no way we're getting through all of this today. But let us start. There was a COVID-19 economic recovery task force that was focused on rebuild Jamaica. Final report was June 30th. And so, of course, the first question that everybody should ask is who was on this report? Who wrote it? So the chairman of the recovery task force was Dr. Honorable Nigel Clark, who was the Minister of Finance and Public Service. In the last administration, elections have just passed, and he has retained the title. He's sworn back in as Minister of Finance as well. So we have a continuity of policy. And that's something that a lot of people like to see. In the case of Jamaica, between the PNP and the JLP, since we had the IMF deal, there was continuity of policy between two different parties. That's not something you see in somewhere like America, where I live. And that can cause major problems. Jamaica, thankfully, has had continuity of at least fiscal policy, regardless of which party won. We now have continuation of policy. But of course, the report was done and sent out June 30th, 2020. And there's a chairman's message. I'm going to obviously scroll, and we're going to get into the meat of this. But the core of the message was really straightforward. Right? The COVID-19 pandemic is the most serious global public health threat in a century, and it's causing the most damaging global economic crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And of course, every country has been affected. Jamaica is not unique. Jamaica is not special. Right? Jamaica has heavy exposure to tourism, Bahamas, Barbados, a lot of countries as well. So he gets into it. It was a really good message, but he points out something that a lot of us have actually said, and this is not just in the diaspora. Everybody, local Jamaicans, have said the crisis has unveiled social fragilities that need to be addressed for Jamaica to recover sustainably and with greater resilience. And then they point out that although pre-COVID-19 unemployment was at a historical low, Right? Everybody keeps touting that Jamaica had the lowest unemployment numbers in the last 40 years. He says the majority of households lack an income stabilizer. And as such, within budget capacity, the government of Jamaica social support interventions will need to continue in the short term, even as the social safety institutions are strengthened over the medium term. Now, recall the United States has a social security. Jamaica does not have social security. Well, unemployment insurance, I should say. We don't have unemployment insurance in Jamaica. We do in the United States. That is now being put together. I understand the legislation is being worked on. Jamaica does have the National Insurance Fund. So we have some other things that we're doing, but they're working on that. Let's rationalize some things. But this was something, right? The suboptimality of informality for state and citizen has been brutally exposed by the pandemic, which sounds like some big words, to be honest. But what it's simply saying is that we have a very, very high component of our GDP economy in Jamaica as being informal. All right, we don't want to formalize the company, register the business, hire the staff, put their names on there, deduct their taxes. In the US, we deduct PAYE, right? You have a form. And you have taxes, right? Well, in the same case in Jamaica, you're supposed to be paying NHT and NIS and so on. So we have a problem in informality in Jamaica. We've sometimes heard somewhere in the region of 40%. So that would make it hard for them to identify who is actually being impacted and to get cash into their hands. And this had nothing to do with COVID. This was just the reality of Jamaica. And they need to work on that. And I'm glad that they point that out, because if we pretended that we wanted to go back to the way things were, well, we're going back to things that were not optimal, were not ideal. So thankfully, the report is focused on going forward, right? Which is partly why this thing is called Island Forward. We want to move the region forward in the way that we talk about things and suggest ideas. Let me see any comments coming. Where can I get the report? So I'll be honest, Shani, I don't know. I actually don't know where you can get the report. It was sent to me. I have not been told that there's a website for the report to be downloaded on. Maybe I will create a link and set it up so that you can download it. So I'll have to think about that. But email me and I can send you the report, david@bluemahocapital.com. I can send you the report. I believe I have my email address banner up here that I can see there. So email me and I'll send you the copy of the report. We can do that. But I don't know of a website where you can just go and download it. That's really interesting. But very good question. Very good question. So here's what it said. And this was what was most heartening to me, right? The COVID-19, I highlighted it here. The COVID-19 Economic Task Force recommends not simply fixing what has been broken by COVID-19, thereby returning Jamaica to the pre-COVID-19 reality. The aim is to go beyond to also address the fundamental gaps that have been exposed by COVID-19 and exploit the opportunities the crisis offers. And then it goes on to say, in other words, we must do better. And I love hearing that, right? As Jamaicans, that's true. In other words, we must do better. Our standards are too low. Let's just be honest. We must embrace reform with ambition to be on a better footing as recovery takes hold. So that's what this report really came down to, and that's important. That's Carol Beckford jumping in. Hi, Carol, who recently joined Blue Maho Capital, and she will actually be a guest on this show very soon. You'll hear the announcement. So this is important, right? The report wouldn't make any sense if people didn't recognize that there were things that were broken first, right? You can't fix something if you don't admit that it's first broken. So you need to analyze, understand what is broken, try to diagnose why it is broken, right? It's not enough to just say somebody has a fever. You need to understand, why do they have a fever, right? Was it their environment that caused it? How did they get sick? What is causing the fever? So you have to diagnose first. And then you're going to be able to then treat the patient. That's exactly what they did. They diagnosed it. But of course, Jamaica has done a lot of these reports since independence. They've diagnosed all the problems. You're looking behind me, there's a Vision 2030 book. It diagnosed every single one of the problems that is discussed here in the task force report. I say, Maxine, say, yeah, man, embrace reform with ambition. And this is what I said, Jamaicans like to do things big, you know. Let's be honest. When we choose to be great, we are great. We decide we want to have the fastest man in the world, the fastest woman in the world. We're going to do this music. We talk about to the world, right? We do that, Jamaica to the world. But then in other aspects, we don't try to embrace things with ambition and reform in particular. We complain about Singapore and we point out why it couldn't work in Jamaica. We talk about Israel and Costa Rica. Now we should be looking at Botswana and Rwanda as well. But we don't seem like, you see, look at this man move fast enough. Shani said, email sent. Yes, sir. Email is, I'm sure it will be received. But that's it. We need to embrace reform with ambition. Wholeheartedly agree with that. I love that. We need to have a forward-thinking approach and innovative mindset. We need to be focused on problem solving rather than merely complaining. Right? There are a lot of people who complain about what is wrong in Jamaica and offer no solutions, not a single solution, and that's not helpful. Right? We want constructive criticism. So help to identify the problems, catalog the problems, and then make some recommendations. At least give the list of problems to somebody who can then help to make recommendations and help to scale things. But complaining is not a strategy. Right? Complaining alone has never solved anything. Let's find solutions. And if somebody else is working a solution that we think is better than ours, then help them execute. Right? We don't always have to get the credit for the solution. I think once we work without wanting to give credit, to get credit for ourselves, we accomplish far more together. So we realize we just passed the chairman's message. You don't even say who was on the task force. So here's who was on the task force. Task force included 6 ministers. It was appointed on April 27, 2020, and they spent 8 weeks working on this. Dr. Nigel Clark was the chairman of the task force. And then they're going to list some of the names. PricewaterhouseCoopers assisted with tourism and construction infrastructure subcommittees. They had subcommittees with local services and tourism. Obviously, that made sense. They submitted that information to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. This is about COVID, so it would make sense you would want to involve them as well. Planning Institute of Jamaica provides a tremendous amount of information, but especially in the social development chapter. Right? There's a whole chapter on just social development of Jamaica post-COVID-19. Right? That's a chapter that we all should be wanting to go and read. And probably should become required reading for everybody who is going to comment on Jamaica's economic progress and where we should be going. But that is really where it is. They said we have a public health impact that has been massive. There was an economic impact in Jamaica that they were estimating that the economy was going to contract between 4% and 6% in fiscal year 2020 to 2021 versus a pre-COVID forecast of 1.2% growth. So Jamaica is projected to grow 1.2%. Instead, it's going to contract roughly 4 to 6%. It could even be worse. And it actually did end up being a little bit worse, right? So from a money standpoint, they estimated that revenues would decline by approximately 81 billion Jamaican dollars. Just again, 81 billion with a B. Exchange rate fluctuates between 142 and 148 US dollar, right? 148 Jamaican to 1 US. I think it's down to 142 at the end of last week. But just multiply by 140, divide by 145, divide the 81 billion by 145, we get the US dollar number. But this is not small, right? Even while expenditures would go up. So they said that, while other inflows would be lower by 5 billion, even as new expenditure of $34 billion, new expenditure of $34 billion would have to be accommodated. So the total fallout and cost to the government was expected to be about 120 billion US dollars. I mean, Jamaican dollars. 120 billion Jamaican dollars, somewhere in the 800 million US dollar range. So this is real money, right? 142 billion Jamaican is 1 billion US. 1 million, 100 million US, right? Look at me doing all these numbers wrong. 1 billion US would be 145 billion Jamaican dollars. So this is a big blow. That's the important thing to say. Let me see. Oh, Columbia, Missouri. Hi, Nicole. Nicole is in here. James Richardson is in here. We got San Diego in here. Wow, look at this. David, I wish every Jamaican was listening to you right now. Yeah, well, you can share the link to the video afterwards and get more people to listen. I appreciate that. Missouri is in the house. And look at this one. So I'm happy. Ken is saying I'm happy it looks at not just bringing the country to where it was prior to COVID-19, but beyond. And I am 100% in agreement with you. That was really important. Andrew asked this question: how do you then decide which issues to prioritize in tackling the given the resources available? That's a great question, Andrew. So I would say this, and this was a discussion that we had with Dr. Damien King when we did the recorded versions of Island Forward. You have to start by figuring out what are the single highest priorities, right? It cannot be everything at once, right? We can't do everything at once because we don't have that kind of money, and we do not want to begin printing again like what Jamaica did in the past, right? That was ridiculous. So what matters is that we have an order of priority, but there's something that have to happen at the same time. The first thing is that you have to stabilize, right? If a patient comes in because they had to get rushed to the emergency room, the first thing you do is stabilize the patient. You don't start doing surgery yet. You stabilize the patient, and then you can do surgery. You can figure out what's wrong and end it. So right now, Jamaica had to focus on stabilizing the patient, and the patient is not yet stabilized. So they need to focus on stabilizing the patient. When then you look at the resources, you have to figure out where do you get the most bang for the buck, right? The multiplier effect of the capital that is going to be deployed and expended on reform. Thankfully, in Jamaica's case, the government has been divesting things via the stock exchange, so Jamaicans themselves, local and abroad, can own a piece of these companies, freeing up resources for the government to deploy elsewhere. So they listed the National Highway Company, for example, and that gave capital back to the government to go and do something with. The Wigton, the same thing. That gave capital back to the government to go and do something else with. So we have a lot more waste, essentially, and struggling entities that really shouldn't be in the hands of the government because they've been wasted for decades. So that's going to free up cash. But if you start with what do you see Jamaica doing in 2030 and in 2050? So 10 years from now and 30 years from now, where do you want Jamaica to be? Then you go back and look at Botswana, you look at Rwanda, you look at Singapore, you look at Israel, you look at Costa Rica, and we can decide where do we want to compete. Well, there's one thing that all of them have in common. Number one was investment in education. And there's no question that we need educational reform in Jamaica. It's the same problem in America. Right? So you have to spend money on education. Well, number two is that they need a safe and secure environment. Right? People need to feel safe going to work, going to parties, going to events, doing business. And Jamaica does have a crime problem, and they have to acknowledge that. Colombia has done a good job of dealing with that crime problem and the perception. Jamaica has not. So national security is going to be important. But crime is not solved with, ZOSOs, right? Zones of special operations, and constantly doing stuff with the police. You need to reform the police, but education is a component of crime. People are committing crimes because they don't have access to opportunity. So you twin education and dealing with the crime situation, and you get public safety. So those are two things, which then increases foreign direct investment and local investment. Right? If you're a business, probably 15 to 20% of your expenses in Jamaica relate to security and crime. If you could actually bring down crime and that need for safety, that money gets shifted to somewhere else, for example, to research and development, to hiring and training more staff. And so we have a training problem. I see Nicole asking, what is the root cause of crime? And so that's an interesting question. I would say that the root cause of crime in any country is a lack of opportunity. That is the root cause of crime. People still need to eat, need to feed themselves, take care of their families, put a roof over their head. And if you can't get it legitimately, or you feel that the system is not set up for you to earn it legitimately, or it's too little, it's not fair pay, you're going to find a way to at least provide for your family. And it then goes from there. Right? They've done studies that also show that crime should be more thought of, and violence in particular, specifically, should be thought of more the way that epidemiologists would look at how a virus would spread. So there's a community aspect, where you are raised and what's happening around you. But if people don't feel that they have a way out legitimately, then they end up turning into a life of crime to stay afloat. So see, exactly, lack of opportunity, lack of education and poverty and opportunity. So we need to make sure that we work on that. Of course, Akelia is right. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Since you bring that up, I'm going to go and look for it, because there's going to be a bunch of people who don't know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I'm going to pull that up and show you this very famous image, which if you were in college, if you went to undergrad, you should have seen this, but not all of us see that. So let me pull it up and show you. I just Google it. This is one thing I love about this, right? We can just run in. So let me share this screen now. Thank you for that one, Akila. I'm going to bring it up now, and we're going to bring it up. Crime is a public health issue in Jamaica. That's exactly right. I would agree with you. Crime, and so Akila was the last representative for the Northeast USA and the Jamaica Diaspora Advisory Board. Big up London. I see London tuning in here on this. So this is great. All right. So this is now the hierarchy of needs, guys. So I'm going to pull this up so you can see it. And so this is I mean, she's a social scientist, but as Maxine is saying, education as to how to deal with people when they upset you by communicating in a civil manner versus turning to violence. That's one part of it, Maxine. We do have a problem with conflict resolution in Jamaica. There's no question about that. And you know that. If you just step on a man's toe in the party, we've seen what happened. But it's a lot more than that. We're talking about education that is focused on school, right? Look at the math and English passes for CSEC, previously for CXC in Jamaica. And when you look at how many schools are failing people graduating with at least 3 CSEC subjects, English language, English literature, and math, you can see that we are going to be causing a pipeline problem, right? No matter how many people you lock up, you're going to have more people falling into the ditch who then get locked up again. So that's not it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic needs come first, right? So psychological needs, food, water, warmth, and rest. The next after that is security and safety. Then other things build on that. That is what Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about. And that's why this is important. There are too many people in Jamaica still worried about the bottom part of the pyramid. Food, access to food, access to water. We've literally seen that as a problem, which is crazy that you run an election and there are people who are campaigning the fact that 30 years later, they finally turn on the water for the pipes that were laid and connected, right? So rest, people need a place to live. Affordable housing is a problem in Jamaica. And both parties were talking about doing tens of thousands of housing starts for affordable housing. And then security and safety is a fundamental problem in Jamaica. And we need to just admit that, right? Stop pretending it's not real. Don't complain when somebody brings it up. It's real. So we need to address that. I like this one. So we're saying that I agree. I was just listing one problem. Yes, that's one problem. But actually, that's the smallest problem that leads to violence. It starts by having people not even be in that position. Allow them to be educated, right? Barbados covers the cost for tertiary education. Jamaica does not. Jamaica subsidizes it, but we still have a problem, right? You look at Europe, they cover the cost of tertiary education. Canada covers the cost of tertiary education. Singapore, South Korea, they all invested heavily. India invested heavily in education. So education comes first. Akila is saying that it needs public health solutions, which is not the case in Jamaica yet. And that is true, right? We have seen violence prevention making attempts in Jamaica. But there was even recent defunding of a program where the government wasn't contributing their part anymore for violence prevention. So we need to see that. See, Chan is saying it's also the ability to maximize current opportunities. Hard work should equal maximizable recurring opportunities. So I would disagree with that, Shani. I don't believe in hard work. I believe in smart work. And let me explain the difference. This is a discussion I've had with my father for a few years. And so we love talking about this one with other people. You are a hard worker versus a smart worker. You have a supervisor and you're digging a ditch beside the road. You go to work that morning and your supervisor says, hey, I need you to dig a ditch for me. Right? Or, let's say a hole. I need you to dig a hole for me. The hard worker then spends the next 8 hours with his shovel, digging a hole. At the end of the day, the hard worker then says, yes, boss, dig my hole, want my pay now for the 8 hours. And then the supervisor says, oh, you dig the hole in the wrong place. So you worked hard, but not smart. You should not get paid just for hard work. You need to work on the right things at the right time, which means that you ask the right questions and have the right leadership. So the smart worker would start by saying, first of all, boss, where you want me to dig the hole, how deep you want the hole to be, how wide you need the hole to be. And then you get that information. And you know what they say after that? By the way, why are we digging the hole? Because it might turn out that that's actually not a good reason to dig the hole. We don't need a hole. Here's a different way to solve the problem. Smart workers get paid more. We still have an education system in Jamaica, in the United States and elsewhere that is built on this colonial plantation mentality where we tell you what to do. We're going to have you learn by rote, right? Listen to me. I am the teacher. I am right. Do what I say. Don't ask me why. Just do it. And then you can go and work on the factory line just doing this thing. We are now in the 21st century. It does not work that way. Robots even know how to think more than some of these people. So we need a modernized education system for the 21st century, for the fourth industrial revolution. And we are not making those investments as yet, right? A tablet in school is not enough. You have to completely change the way that is done. So smart work, everybody agree with that one. Work smarter, not harder. And Nick is going to keep saying education is extremely important. Now the assumption is there that there will be opportunity given after the education. And I love that. When saying hopefully the boss knows the answer to those questions. If the boss don't know, the boss should be fired. But see, exactly. The labor force needs skills that matches the market, including future opportunities. And that's exactly what was different. I see, Ajir Cunningham on here saying, yes, we're talking about augmented classes. It is important to understand how Costa Rica did it. You have to be careful about the build it and they will come, because you could now decide we're going to have a class to teach, 10,000 people in Jamaica to become full stack developers. And we're going to start teaching them at third form, which is like age 13, age 14. And then they all graduate, and then there are no jobs for full stack developers because there's no company to hire them. And there's no investment capital to help startups get founded to hire those people. So they're not going to just show up just because they have full stack developers. It doesn't work that way. You need some work for them to also do. And so what Costa Rica did with Intel, Costa Rica has an Intel plant, right? The chip company Intel is in Costa Rica. No reason why it couldn't be in Jamaica. A very hilly interior. They're smaller. But what they did was they partnered with Intel and said, hey, we want to provide workers for you. You help to design the program, so that when they graduate, they go immediately into your fabrication plant. And because Intel is situated there, companies like Dell and their other downstream customers then came and set up, and it became a cluster. That's what happens. You end up getting clustering. Jamaica has been doing that, and that's slowly getting there. Factories Corporation of Jamaica and the Special Economic Zone, we have about 110 SEZ companies in Jamaica, either creating special economic zones or actually as tenants in special economic zones. So there is a plan to do clustering. It is slowly happening, and you will hear more about this over the next 12 months for sure. But that is going to be really important, right? It's not build it and they will come. It's partner with them and build it and bring them at the same time. Right? Private sector and public sector has to partner. So you call it a PPP, a public-private partnership. That's what you want to see. And so I see Nicole saying it's all about empowerment and accepting that responsibility, growth and innovation results. Jason is saying having 25 to 30 persons in one classroom with one teacher, so many different personalities, not everyone can grasp information the same way. And that is true. We currently have a school system that says, we don't care how good or bad you are as a teacher, you get assigned these students. Imagine if you could have some of the best teachers across the island teaching hundreds of students thanks to technology, right? A camera in the classroom, smart boards elsewhere, or Zoom now that we're doing that, Google, all these things. They get to teach those, and then you have the other teachers now learn from them, so you get best practices being passed forward, but then can do individual work with the kids. I'm not an education person, so those are the ideas that I have seen work elsewhere and would love to see happen by leveraging technology, but it starts by focusing on the best practices and who is accomplishing the best. If you look at Jamaica's school performances, there are obviously some schools in the mid-tier who have some students that do really well, and then another 40 or so percent that just don't do so well. But some of those students did well at the same school. It's the same school, it's the same teachers, the same lack of resources. What was different about these students? Understand that, and we can have more transformation. We shouldn't just blame the entire system, right? There are clearly people who are exceeding within the current system. So how do we make sure fewer people fall by the wayside, and that changes? So I see Shelley saying, completely agree, education and proper family organizing initiatives. And this is so important. It starts at home. It really does start at home. So we need to ensure that we help more parents understand what role they play in the home. The teacher does not have time to be raising a child and handling the discipline part. Right? The attitude coming into the school needs to be good from day one. So let's work on the parents. Right? Jamaica used to have a families and values attitudes campaign Of course, the question is, who is determining what values and attitudes should be passed on? So there we get into an issue about discrimination. That is now diced, and that's a whole nother show. This is a reason for STEM schools. And I would say, Juanetta, we need to be careful about talking about just STEM, right? STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. But we cannot forget arts, right? It is important that children learn the arts as well. And I got into this discussion with somebody over the weekend saying that the A is crucially part of what is critically important, because think about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs will be considered STEM, right? This is a co-founder of Apple. I am talking to you. My iPad is what I'm using for IGTV right now. I'm streaming this on an iMac right now. So he helped to create the STEM side of things, all technology. But the fonts that we use, we have nice cursive and all these nice looking fonts, and the designers of, because Steve Jobs during college chose to go and do a calligraphy class that was not in his syllabus. He went and did a calligraphy class, and it made him understand about design. Right? When we use the computer and you call it the UI, the user interface, that is art people. Graphic designers are doing that, right? The UX person, the user experience person cannot only have done STEM. When you do a website, you have somebody design the website first, then somebody programs the website. So we have to make sure we're talking about STEAM. Arts and culture matters, especially in a country like Jamaica, right? Jamaica is most known for its culture, but we spend the least amount of money in our culture. And that's what Steve Wilson, Sean Paul's manager, said in the first episode that we did for this season, season 2. You look at Alpha Boys and what they do with the band, and who has come out of that. We just had Toots and the from Toots and the Maytals pass away, R.I.P. Toots. Are we actively training the next generation of reggae musicians? Are we actually spending money showing kids that they can learn to play drums, and here's how you do a digital beat, and here's how you do a song, and how you produce it, and how you mix it, how you master it, how you get it out into iTunes and get it into Apple stores and get it into Google Play and get it on Spotify? We should actually put more effort onto culture, because it is our biggest export. We just don't keep the money. So I like that Shelley bring up the lack of critical thinking skills. And that is a fundamental problem. The current school system was not designed for critical thinking. It is designed to listen to me because I'm in charge, which is actually how a lot of businesses approach, which is not really smart. It's not about listen to me because I'm in charge. It's about, here's a problem I would like solved. How would you recommend solving it? That is the better employee. So I see Kai on Instagram saying, I feel like we were forced to specialize in high school rather than trying to learn as much skills as possible. And that's 100% true. We are based on a British system that is very hierarchical, that decided that people from certain social classes wouldn't do certain jobs. So I grew up in Jamaica, right, between Jamaica and Miami. And when I was in third form, right, this is, third form is when you pick your classes that you now need to choose for CXC. So I was 10 when I started high school. So at age 13 in Jamaica, I had to decide what classes. I had to choose 5 classes. Math, English literature, and English language were fixed. I had to do those. I had to pick 5 other classes based on what I want to eventually be at 13 years old. And so I wanted to eventually get into medicine like my dad. So I chose physics, chemistry, biology. I needed 3 sciences to get into med school. And then after that, I picked geography and I picked Spanish. So I got 2 others. So I did those 5. And I got ones. CXC is what we did. And you get graded 1, 2, 3. I got ones in all of them. So I got ones in, actually, funny enough, I got a 1 in Spanish. I got 2s in English because I didn't think I needed to study English. But that is something that is actually kind of ridiculous. At age 13, I picked the classes that would determine if I went to law school, if I chose history, or if I went to medical school. That's why I had to choose the sciences, or I would do principles of business, POB, or accounts. That's kind of crazy. That's insane, and that's some very 18th century thinking. That's not even 20th or 19th century. That is very backwards, and that needs to change. We shouldn't be specializing that early. When you go to college, when I went to university in the US, yes, I picked a major, but I had a whole bunch of other classes I had to do. So I had to do religion classes. I had to do Western civilization classes. I had to do philosophy classes. I mean, that's great. I didn't know I would want to learn about Stoicism. I didn't know I would end up loving Taoism and Confucianism and Buddhism. So we specialize way, way too early. Moneta is saying most bosses in Jamaica don't know the answers and no one is making sure they do, which is why Jamaica need to do housekeeping and send home those bosses. This is the only way Jamaica can prosper. So, I have to laugh in the Moneta because yes, that is true, but isn't this true for basically every country though? Like when we talk about it, a problem that is in Jamaica, we make it sound like it's unique to Jamaica. I have a whole bunch of bosses in America I could introduce you to who don't know the answers either. And they don't know, right? Nobody tracking them, nobody making sure because you are good as a salesperson, so you get promoted to be in charge of all the salespeople. But that doesn't mean you're a good leader. Just because you're good at doing your job doesn't mean you're good at teaching other people how to do the job. And then it doesn't mean you're good at leading those people afterwards. And that's called actually the Peter principle. You eventually get promoted and hit a ceiling because you get promoted to your maximum incompetency. That's what happens. So this is not unique to Jamaica. This is just management theory, period, throughout the corporate world. So I've seen on Instagram here, in high school, I had to also specialize too. And I graduated in 2017. We are still way behind. I love it. So where did you get the strategic focus in animation? Oh, where did the strategic focus in animation come from? So that's interesting. Sure. I will talk a little bit about that one. Let's leave up this Steam thing so people see it. And then I'll go back and answer the question. So I actually spoke I wrote a column about animation, and I spoke at one of the graduation event out in Montego Bay related to this. I never forgot that speech because somebody chose animation. I can tell you why it made sense, right? We are culturally very significant in terms of Jamaicans do stuff, right? We're known for our culture, so they figured art wouldn't be too much of a stretch. We are known for visual arts and so on, and not animation for cartoons, but when you look at South Korea, I remember saying it in the speech. I asked this class. It was Montego Bay Community College about 11 years ago at the graduation. And I asked them, how many people in this room know Avatar Last Airbender and watch that show on Nickelodeon? Every hand go up, right? And the group, everybody's hand went up. And I said, okay, how many people know that Avatar Last Airbender is an American show? Everybody hand went up. It's an American show. And I said, okay, how many people know that Avatar Last Airbender is animated in South Korea? And basically every hand came down. They were shocked. And I said, what's so different about South Korea from Jamaica? You could animate stuff. There's no reason why I couldn't do the in-betweens, the cleaning. You could do certain things, the storyboarding. There's specific aspects that could be outsourced to somewhere that has a lot of cheap labor, but not like crazy prices. We don't want it to be like a sweatshop. But Jamaica would be better than South Korea from a time standpoint, right? Jamaica is on, again, U.S. East Coast, same time zone, hour and 20-minute flight from Miami. It's actually a little less than that. We're not flying right now, but high connectivity, highly educated workforce. We need training, but we are educated. The training is a prime. English is our first language. So Jamaica is the third largest naturally English-speaking population in the entire Western Hemisphere. So if you're in the United States and doing a show, would you want to send it to India, South Korea, or Japan to be animated? Or would you rather send it to Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, Bahamas to get animated? Especially because we are Americanized too. Like, let's just be honest. So that's where the animation option came up. And so we will eventually have somebody on here to talk about animation. The Kingstones Festival is something that has seen that happen. And there are shows, right, in Jamaica, that's done in Jamaica. Well, they've worked on shows in Jamaica that air elsewhere. We even had a sequence that was on Sesame Street recently. So I will have that person, Kenya Mattis, come on and talk. Good friend of mine. That's where that came from. So we're seeing this one, like you're saying, you do find a distinction in parenting between those better resourced, i.e. higher socioeconomic status, because there are less stressors to worry about. And that is true. And that's why we need to make sure that people feel that they're included. People need to feel that they're included. It shouldn't be that because me, David Mullings, grew up in Kingston 6 in Hope Pastures, went to Mona Prep and went to Campion, had a far better opportunity in life to do things than the person who grew up less than a kilometer down the road from me in Standpipe, who ended up going to Mona High instead. Right? This is a real story. I played football at Real Mona with that person. And that was the first ever video I did. I sat down with him. My nickname was Basha. He played sweeper. I was a striker at Real Mona for the under-20 team in 2001. And I had to ask him. I would carry him home. And I had to sit with Basha. And I was like, I don't understand. I used to walk past Standpipe on the way home from Campion. How is it that you are here and haven't had the same opportunities that I have? And I don't want to hear that it's because my father is a doctor and my mother is a nurse. Because my mother used to walk barefoot to go get the bus to go school when she was going to prep school. And dad used to have to wake up at 4 a.m. to go and cut cane, right? They didn't grow up wealthy. They benefited from free education in the 1970s. And then were able to do things with that. But what's your story? Instead of judging him, I said, let me just hear your story. And I sat the camera, took my mom and dad's camcorder, and I just sat with him and said, tell me your story. And it was just so fascinating that somebody less than a kilometer away from me was talking about the safety and security issues that he had, the water issues, but more importantly, electricity issues. Because he didn't have light all the time, electricity, he wasn't able to study and complete his homework. That then led to him not getting the subjects he wanted to get, which then he had to pay to take the SCXC exam. And his parents didn't have all the money to allow him to pay for all the exams he wanted to do. So he would have to take the exams as the money came in. That is part of the fundamental problem with our system in Jamaica. And I do agree with the concept that we have an apartheid version of education in Jamaica, and we're going to have to deal with it. We have to acknowledge this first, admit it, and then fix it. And now we have a new Minister of Education, so let us see what she's going to do, and let us go from there. I seen Shelley said that Jamaica should have the biggest cultural export in the Caribbean, not just in music, but also in film and TV shows. Look at how South Korea built a global industry following around K-dramas. So this is Korean dramas and K-pop. I don't see why Jamaica can't do the same. I intend to do. So we're going to talk Shelley, and we're going to have Kim Marie Spence on the show one day, because Kim Marie was Jamaica's film commissioner at one time, close friend of mine, studied this exact thing. She specialized in studying South Korea. She was based in Australia, New Zealand, studied South Korea and K-pop, is now in the UK, sits on the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, which reports to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, advising the minister and the prime minister. And she's focused on cultural exports. We've had her on the show before. I will have a one-on-one with her to talk about that. But this is so on point. I've seen Wendy saying mindset. Mindset is important. Again, Akilia saying access and inclusion. This is what's important. Access and inclusion. Obviously, Maxine saying, Shelley, you have to talk. We need to talk about that. We have, and I love this. Trinidad Jappine. Wendy Jappine, Trinidad. I love it. Bring up the Trinidad thing. But this is what it is. And here, Qualified Academy on Instagram is saying that you need to have us talk about software engineering. Yes, we need to talk about software engineering, but that's only a part of it. Software alone is not the solutions to Jamaica. And we need to focus on the things where we have a comparative advantage. And Jamaica does not have a comparative advantage versus India, except in the English side. So we need to scale up, and software engineering is a part of what we're going to do. We should have like a mini Google campus in Jamaica. I agree with that. And we are investing in that space as well. So that is there. But before we even get to software engineering, we need to start with education and then safety. And then we need to get access to resources. Water shouldn't be a problem. Healthcare shouldn't be a problem, right? Electricity shouldn't be a problem. So we need to ensure that those things are there. And then affordable housing. Again, Maslow's hierarchy of needs are going to be crucial. So Janet is saying progress. And of course, Nico is saying, Wendy, unfortunately, it's a much more complex set of issues. Access to resources is intimately linked to socioeconomic status and background. It's not just mindset. So it is not just mindset, Nicole, but mindset is a major part of it. And you know why? If you believe that the state does not care about you and your sex safety and your education and your growth, then you will end up having a mindset that I can just do what I need to do. I need to take care of myself and not worry about cohesive society. I need to worry about my individual self. And it becomes a free fall. So how we treat people affects their mindset, and that mindset reinforces their behavior, and it becomes this negative feedback loop. What you need is a positive feedback loop. And that's the difference between Jamaica and Singapore. Jamaica had a negative feedback loop. Singapore had a positive feedback loop. Right? They exited a federation around the same time as Jamaica in the early 1960s. But they chose to invest in education and show value for the people. They chose to invest in affordable housing and show value for their people. But most importantly, they chose to ensure that corruption was not going to be a problem among their politicians. Right? Lee Kuan Yew did not play with that. So let's be honest. We need to make sure our leaders have zero tolerance for corruption and for 25 plus years, that was not a thing in Jamaica. It was pretty much free fall, do what you want to do. And I think it has amounted to one Jamaican politician has ever been locked up. If somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but one has ever been actually imprisoned for corruption. And we've clearly had more than one case of corruption. So, and that's an issue. Let us see. Shelly saying she got knocked off, so she didn't see Maxine's message. But yes, Shelly and Maxine, you guys need to connect and talk about the culture side. So that's what it is. I say it on here. Corruption is very important. Corruption is the most important thing. If you choose that you want to reform a country, and we're going to invest in education, and we're going to now upgrade schools, for example, or we're going to the tablets in schools, you know what you need? You need to make sure you have no corruption with the minister or people executing the program. It doesn't matter if you have great intentions. If the money never gets there, it will never improve, right? Jamaica has been talking about tablets in schools forever. This is years, man. I was working in Jamaica when I talked about tablets in schools. Where are the tablets? So we need to talk about that. We need to focus on dealing with corruption. Dealing with corruption then means that we can actually trust that money gets deployed where it says it is going to be deployed, because that is actually the issue. It's the same problem we have here in the United States. I'm not going to pretend like America is any better. We have a corruption problem too. It's worse in some cases. But let's think about this. I am a taxpayer, and you take money from my paycheck, whether it's 15%, 20%, 10%, some number, but you charge me taxes. You, the government, are supposed to provide services to me, the taxpayer. Whether I'm a person or a business, you're supposed to provide services. Good roads, not no bag of pothole. Not no rundown road when it rain, it flood, right? Good roads with drainage. Hello, Jamaica. Good roads with drainage. That's number one. I expect security, safety and security. I expect police that treat people with respect. Clearly, we have that problem in America too. So let's admit that. The police are to protect and serve us, the taxpayers. You're not our boss. We're your boss. So that's number two. Number three, I expect that I get in access to healthcare. Clearly in America, that don't work. They don't, elsewhere, everywhere else, all the other OECD countries have healthcare that is affordable and available to everyone. I don't have that here in the United States because of the way healthcare is. So I'm not on Medicare and Medicaid. So we have an issue there. Jamaica at least has healthcare available to everyone. The key question is, do you have enough blood bags? Do you have enough syringes? Do you not have enough PPE? So it's not enough to just have it affordable and accessible. You still need the resources. I want to feel comfortable getting a CAT scan in Jamaica, right? A CT scan, an MRI. I don't want the machine brought down. So that needs to be an issue on the health side. I don't want to hear that my money have to go pay out somebody because I got fired improperly or because I'm thief the money. That's just it. So if you keep doing this for years and decades and taking my money and wasting it, why am I going to want to give you any more money? That don't make any sense. Right? It's common sense would say that if you keep taking my money and wasting it, I'm not going to want to give you any more. So are we surprised that Jamaicans would have such a high informality? Are we surprised that people in America would complain about paying taxes? Because my family in Canada don't complain about paying the higher taxes in Canada because they see the services they get. In Singapore, they see the results. They see the services they get. They see how clean their city is. They see how green their cities. They see the transportation that is clean, on time, well-behaved people, and they don't mind paying what's required. So that, to me, that's common sense, right? That's a no-brainer. George is saying education should include awareness of the toxic effects of corruption. I love it. Everything you talk about corruption, it flood here too. Trust me, you go to Miami. I grew up in Miami too, between Kingston and Miami. I went to the University of Miami. We want to talk about flooding in Miami. Jesus. Jamaica is not unique. I want us to just admit that. Jamaica is not unique. It's not special when it comes to a corruption problem. It comes to an infrastructure problem. It happens even here in the rich, big United States, right? I have never, somebody can correct me if you're wrong, right here or afterwards. I have never heard of anybody in Jamaica going bankrupt because of a medical issue, right? Never. That is something that is commonplace in the United States. It does not happen in Canada. It does not happen in the UK. It does not happen in Germany. So while we always sometimes run around, oh yeah, Like always, sometimes, always. We're always talking about the grass is green on the other side. Actually, it's not. Just remember that. So Jamaica has its problems, and I want to focus on Jamaica's problems because this is called Island Forward, not America Forward. We'll do a different show for that one. So, but yeah, it's crucial to recognize that corruption ultimately is the first problem, right? We need the money to get through to where it needs to actually go. Clearly, we're on what is page. Let me see what page we're on for this thing. I need to share the screen again because we were supposed to be talking about this and we got into some really interesting. It was good. I appreciate it. We're going to have to do more episodes following this, right? Where we're talking about the economic impact, the policy response, and then what do they actually want to do for COVID. So here is who was on the board. This is important. We had Honorable Edmund Bartlett, so he was a Minister of Tourism. Babsy Grange, who was a Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport, and just one of Jamaica's biggest proponents and supporters of our culture. I love Auntie Babsy. Honorable Audley Shaw, Minister of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries. He's now back for just Industry and Commerce. Dr. Christopher Tufton, obviously the Minister of Health and Wellness. Daryl Vaz was on it as well. He was the Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. My friend Kari Douglas on here, a big up. Thank you, Kari. I appreciate. Thanks for putting yourself up. Kari is someone that I've known for years. I used to sit on her patio and we used to talk about things. And to see her put herself up and do what she did as well, crossing the aisle and decide, you know what, I'm going to go do my thing and live my truth. I have to say big up and respect because a lot of our generation have been told not to get into politics in Jamaica. And Kari is bucking that trend. So thank you so much, Kari. We're going to have you on the show one day. Because she has worked in local government in Kingston, so she can talk about a lot of these issues. All right, Favour Williams, Minister of Science, Energy and Technology. She's now our Minister of Education in Jamaica. But here's some other people, right? We don't want all ministers on there. So Ivan Anderson this is a highway company. John Biles from Choco Caribbean Adventure, so we get tourism. Lloyd Distant, the President of Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. That was important to have Lloyd on there. We'll get him on the show one day. I play football with him at Real Mona. Keith Duncan, the president of the private sector organization in Jamaica, who is also the head of JMMB and is a part of EPOC, the Economic Program Oversight Committee that helped Jamaica to have that good fiscal policy and implement fiscal reform. Dan Edwards from Jamaica Trade and Invest Jampro. We just had a representative, Vivian Scully, on last week. Lenworth Fulton, Agricultural Society. Can't talk about Jamaica without agriculture. No brainer. Dr. Wayne Henry, the Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ. Peter Knight from NEPA, National Environmental Planning Agency. Well, environment has to be the center of everything we're talking about. Obviously, my mentor and coach, Michael Leachin, Jamaican Canadian billionaire and chairman of the Economic Growth Council. William Mafood, past president of PSOJ, who is the head of Wisinco. Joe Matalan, good friend, who is ICD Group of Companies, past president of PSOJ. Richard Pandoy, president of Jamaica Manufacturers Exporters Association, who is also the CEO of Separate. So big up my Shifan from this morning. Omar Robinson from the Jamaica Hotel and Tourism Association. Gordon Shirley, we all know Professor Gordon Shirley, who is the CEO of Port Authority of Jamaica, and also, as we know, was at UWI. And Nadine Spence is a gender activist, so they brought in gender in this thing. How you schedule a meeting with me, Ajir? Just send me a direct message. I'll send the link. Instagram is counting down because it's time. So by Instagram, Adam Stewart, obviously, Adam was on there as Deputy Chairman of Sandals International. He would bring a lot to the table from the tourism side as well. And then we had Donovan Wignall. It's the MSME Alliance, right? There's a micro, small, and medium-sized enterprise. So that's good. This wasn't just big people. It's not just big companies that were on there. They wanted to focus on MSMEs as well. Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, Miss Helene Davis-White was on this panel. So again, trade unions got covered. So labor was represented on here, which is important as well. And then Professor Alvin Wind, who is a Professor Emeritus at University of West Indies. And then Chris Zaka. Chris Zaka is now in charge of Sagicor, past president of the PSOJ, was also on this task force. So we had some pretty big names on this task force. It was really important. And I can't wait to go through what they actually came up with, guys. We're going to have a second episode following up on this. And basically, the chapters are really incredible. So we're going to do a show per chapter so we can just focus. So I will end up having guests for some of these chapters. Let us see how it goes. And let me get as many of these people that were on the task force committee to come on here and talk to you guys directly. But I think it's really important for Jamaicans to see this document, discuss this document, and understand what the future of Jamaica is going to actually look like. It was here. You didn't have to go and look at any party manifesto for an election. You just needed to go and read the Economic Recovery Task Force report, and you would see what they want Jamaica to look like and how different. And you can choose if you agree or not, and then figure out how you can help. That's the important part. If there's something in there you agree with, find out how you can help. If there's something that you disagree with, find out how you can contribute and share a different approach to it. The key thing is that we need all hands on deck, right? You don't need to wait for a ship to be sinking to get all hands on deck. What you need to do is recognize that the ship is running into some problems and I need to know help. That's it. And all us can be captain of the ship. All us cannot be captain of the ship. So that is going to be my call to all of you who are watching this and who watches afterwards. Please let us figure out a way for us to join on deck and focus on Jamaica and then eventually the wider Caribbean and to do other things, right? I see Maxine is saying the USA can learn a thing or two from our friends in Canada when it comes to benefits for the citizens. And I think that is very true. Kian is saying set up a link where you can read it and have questions ready for if and when you have any of those members as guests. So that's a good one. I will have to set up an Island Forward page on probably on Blue Moho Capital's website then that would allow you to download this and submit a question as well, so I could collect questions and start dealing with them, because we do want experts on here. I have certain experiences. I know certain things because I've worked and lived in Jamaica and corporate Jamaica and spent a lot of time with many of the people on this list. But I am not an expert. I just read this stuff and then process it and then study all these other countries. We would love for some of these people who are in the task force to come and explain the thinking behind some of the things that were discussed. And maybe one day we will have the Prime Minister himself come and talk to you guys via the show or via a pre-recorded one. I won't make any promises, but Maxine saying, love this episode. Great talk. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who contributes and supports this, because obviously I don't get paid for this, right? I don't make any money. This is me at home, spend my money on the equipment, and it is partly because I needed to get stuff out of my head, but it also keeps me sane. It allows me to sit here alone in the house in the middle of a pandemic, turn on my yard, and still speak to the whole world and connect with other Jamaicans and people who love Jamaica and want to see a better Jamaica. And that's all I can ask. I appreciate the time. You don't have to give me this hour of your day at any point in time. And so I'm appreciative of it. I will get that link set up. Great suggestion, Kian. And guys, remember, please, there is still a pandemic. Yes, I know I went to Miami yesterday. I was very careful, social distance, hand washing, hand sanitizer, mask wear, everything, right? One person per elevator. That was weird. Please stay safe. We unfortunately, actually, I need to say it on camera. We got a message, a friend of mine yesterday, a friend of the family. My parents knew this person, a doctor in Jamaica. I wanted to say, condolences to the family, but this is Dr. Archie Hudson Phillips, passed away, unfortunately, in Jamaica from COVID-19, I understand. So please remember, this really is something that is serious. It is affecting families. My parents are very disappointed to hear that happen, and this is something we need to take serious. I get in messages still, Shelley saying, David, you don't need to be an expert. Jamaica needs more independent thinkers who is not in the political swamp in Jamaica. So I appreciate that. I love when some people say I'm PNP and then other people next week say I'm JLP. It's great because it means that I right down the middle. I carry no brief for no party in Jamaica. All I care about is a better Jamaica. That's all. And I don't think I have all the answers. I just want to share information and get other people to then support some of the answers. And Janet saying you love watching this episode. I appreciate this. I appreciate it. I love doing it. And I love doing this stuff with you guys. Shelly, you just need to be well read. I love it. So Maxine, I think your closing it off great. Out of many, one love, signing off. See you next week, same time, Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Let's dive even more now into what they identified as the problems in pre-COVID Jamaica, so we can figure out what they came up with as solutions for post-COVID Jamaica. So Patrick, thank you for participating. And I'm glad to talk about this. So, guys, I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. One love and enough respect.